Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I'm Tony Gerdeman, here as always with Tom Moore. Tom, how's it going?
Oh, Tony, we are doing our very favorite thing today, a live show, and we're doing our very favorite thing today in our very favorite way, which is we're kind of winging it. We're not using our usual setup. We'll see how this goes. I'm very excited. Tony, it's Friday. How are you?
I'm doing pretty well. Ohio State baseball has just announced a new hire as head coach, Justin Hare. He comes from Campbell. And Tom, I'm sorry to interrupt you. Do you know what Campbell's Twitter hashtag is?
I don't. They are the Campbell Camels. I'm going to say go Humps.
Close. Roll Humps. So very close. Anyway, there you go. So a new baseball coach for Ohio State. We'll see if it's as easy to win at Ohio State as it is at Campbell. Probably not, but we'll see. So as people tuning in and people listening may know, this is a very big weekend for Ohio State in terms of official visitors. And so we thought we'd spend some time talking about that and going over some of the people that are visiting and likelihoods and things like that. And I'll give you a few names that are going to be visiting. David Sanders, the number one offensive tackle in the class from North Carolina. Devin Sanchez, the number one cornerback in the class, already committed, but he's going to be here in terms of just helping show things around, or scheduled to be here. Naeem Offord, the number two cornerback in the class, with from Alabama, who is committed, but also a Alabama high school prospect. So it's like, there's some nerves there. He's going to be here, and I think it's going to be huge to get him around everybody else. Again, Tavian St. Clair, the quarterback, is committed. Some non-committed guys like Dorian Brew he's a former Ohio and now he's a Texan. That's one of the top cornerbacks in the nation. We saw him at camp last June. Very athletic prospect. And Jordan Davison, the running back from Mater Dei, who I think is maybe where we can start, Tom, because I think this is going to be a very interesting situation. Right now, Ohio State has two running backs committed in Isaiah West and Bo Jackson. So, Jordan Davison, does he want to be part of a 3 running back class? Tom, if he was completely against it, would he make this visit?
You would assume not. And I'm sure this is not, this should not be the first time that he's hearing that Ohio State was looking at taking a 3 running back class. I don't think he was probably blindsided by the fact that, I haven't committed yet, and there's 2 other running backs in the class. It feels like this has kind of been the vision for Carlos Lachlan since he got to Ohio State, is bring in a deeper class this year because you're potentially losing Travion Henderson and Quinshon Judkins after the season. You just lost Alan Hayden to the portal. So you're a little thin in terms of veteran depth there. And, sure, I'm sure official visits are fun. And, so you'd want to go because it's fun, and you get, you get a nice dinner, you get to stay in a nice fun hotel, you get to fly in an airplane, all that fun stuff, all the fun stuff we love to do, Tony. Sure, official visits are fun, but if you had decided I'm absolutely not going to be part of a 3-back class, you're probably not getting on that airplane. Now, we are not sitting at the Columbus airport to find out if Jordan Davison is getting off an airplane at the Columbus airport today. We'll keep an eye on that, and I'm sure we'll hear one way or the other once he is in Columbus. But this feels much more like either if he's in Columbus this weekend, he's either okay with being part of a 3-back class, or he's at least open to being convinced to being part of a 3-back class. This is not an absolute deal breaker. Now, I think we're probably going to know a lot more about where things stand with Ohio State and Jordan Davison coming out of this weekend than we do right now. But it seems like this is obviously, if he's coming to Columbus, he's going to be, he is at least open to being part of a 3-back class.
A year ago at this time, Ohio State was the favorite to land him. And there was obviously a very strong pull to Ohio State. And I don't think that's gone away even with the change at running backs coach, because as you said, they've had previous relationship both being on the West Coast last year, Davison and, of course, Carlos Loughlin at Oregon. So they know each other. This is going to be a huge opportunity for Carlos Loughlin to really show his recruiting chops. And he kind of bristles at the idea of that the running back coach position being just a recruiter. And so, there's nothing that says you can't be a very, very good position coach and also a very good recruiter. And if he would be able to lock in Jordan Davison, that would be a pretty big get, just considering all of the circumstances. But I will say, I don't think this is a standard recruitment of trying to convince a guy to be part of a 3 running back class. Because I think we've talked about it before. If you look at next year's Ohio State running back room, you're probably losing Quinshon Judkins after this year, barring a significant NIL package, which means there is really James Peoples or Sam Williams-Dixon is the only person in front of you. And for a guy like Jordan Davison, who I assume views himself as the best running back in the class, and I'm sure Bo Jackson does and Isaiah West does as well, they're focused on kind of like what's ahead of them and who would they be able to compete against next year for playing time. And the fact that I don't even know if they should really concern themselves with who else is in the class when there's really very little ahead of them. There's a huge opportunity to play next year. That is a draw for any freshman running back on this Ohio State roster in 2025. And so I don't know that the additional people in the class will factor in as much. And especially the way we now have gone to running backs are okay being part of a team, a tandem, in some cases more than a tandem. I will say Bo Jackson was talking, I don't know if this was what Kevin told me or somebody else told me, but like they had told Bo Jackson, it's going to be a two back class. He's like, I didn't realize they're also going to try and maybe go get a third. And now it's kind of news to him. But he also said it doesn't matter. I'm still coming to Ohio State. Nothing they could do, would change that. So, while Jordan Davis may have been aware of it, I don't know that Bo Jackson was until recently. But again, it doesn't impact him. But the path to playing time, I don't necessarily think is impacted by the guys in your class if you view yourself as better than them or, the best in the class.
Right. The guys you're coming in with don't have a head start on you, and the guys who are 1 year ahead of you only have a marginal head start on you. Yeah, they've been in the strength program 1 more year than you have. But James Peoples, does he get 100 carries this fall? I mean, that feels like that might be a lot. I have still not completely recalibrated my brain to the realities of a 16 to 17 game schedule. And so, 100 carries might not be that many for a 16 game schedule if you've got, but you're going to have 2 guys ahead of you getting 200 carries or 250 carries or whatever the number is. So 100 carries is, it's a head start. And Sam Williams-Dixon, if he is the 4th guy, what does he have? 50 carries, 30 carries. I mean, that's not that big of a head start. And we have seen, running back is not offensive line where it's a real developmental position. You need multiple years in the system and multiple years in the strength room and all that kind of stuff. Running back's a place where you have seen guys just basically get off the plane and step on the field and go. Travion Henderson was an almost immediate impact guy as a true freshman. J.K. Dobbins was an immediate impact first game starter as a true freshman. Mike Weber was. Maurice Claret was. I mean, you've seen these guys be immediate impact guys in the running back position for as long as there has been a running back position at Ohio State. So, it doesn't feel like having 2 guys who are 1 year ahead of you, neither of whom is going to be a returning starter. That doesn't feel like that's that big of a hurdle. And, all of these guys are, the reality of being an Ohio State recruit is all of these guys are the best player in their, on their team, in their county, probably. I mean, Mater Dei is pretty loaded, so that might be a little bit of an exception. But, Bo Jackson is probably one of, if not the best players in Northeast Ohio this year. Isaiah West is on, obviously a very talented team out of Philadelphia, but he's also, being a D1 athlete means you have always been the best player on your team by and large. You have always been the best player in your league by and large. So these guys are, these guys are sort of, grown and bred to be confident. And of course I'm the alpha dog. Of course I'm going to be the guy. no one else has a big head start on me, so why wouldn't I continue to be the guy next year?
And really, it's starting would be great, but being the number 2 running back at Ohio State, you still have a shot at 700, 800 yards rushing as a true freshman. You're going to get the ball. And so even if James Peoples establishes himself or Sam Williams-Dixon establishes himself, there's still competition there for playing time for a true freshman, which would make Ohio State an intriguing destination for any of these running backs. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes out of this weekend and whether just as long as the visit isn't canceled between now and the time we post this, then I think that's a good sign. And then you see what goes on after that and the words that are coming out of that and what they explain to him. And really, they obviously want their 5 scholarship running backs, and the 3 guys that they're really targeting now, they really believe can do something pretty quickly. And so I think all of the words will be encouraging to him. Obviously, you're not going to try, we don't know that you're going to really play next year, Jordan, but maybe in 2027, you can start to, that's not the reality of the situation or the reality of the pitch. Maybe the reality of the situation, but not of the pitch. And there will be opportunity for all of these guys to play next year. Tom, another guy that could be playing next year and will certainly be part of the pitch. And let's talk about the biggest name on the board, David Sanders, offensive tackle out of Charlotte Providence Day School, the number 1 offensive lineman in the nation, one of the top 5 players in the nation. There's a connection to Paris Johnson and Johnson family. I guess they're close with David Sanders, and that's a pretty good example to want to be part of and want to follow in the footsteps. And the recruiting rankings are very similar. The opportunity for playing time for David Sanders next year, Tom, who is next year's starting right tackle?
Well, that's an interesting question because Josh Fryer is draft eligible. Is this Josh Fryer's 4th year?
I believe it is his 5th year, right? Is he
5th year? Okay, yeah. Who might have been in 2020? Yeah. So it's not going to be Josh Fryer. Your left tackle is going to be ? Josh Simmons is draft eligible. He could come back for 2025. He made significant strides last year, and if he is if he continues to develop and continues to improve his play at left tackle, and you're the starting left tackle on a national championship or runner-up kind of team, you're probably looking at heading off to the NFL. So after that, then you're looking at George Fitzpatrick and Mahalski. They add someone in the portal. I am always very reticent to project a true freshman to be a starter, especially at tackle. You look at Paris Johnson. Paris Johnson eventually did start on that 2020 Ohio State team as a true freshman, but he was a guard. He played guard on that team, not a tackle, and he was only playing as a result of injuries that happened during the course of that season. So, and I don't know if he even actually ever started a game. He might have always just come in as a backup. And even that is, if you're playing as a true freshman on the line, that's enormous. That's incredible. Starting day one, to continue the Paris Johnson comps, I have the very irresponsible picture of Orlando Pace and Paris Johnson walking down the tunnel together. The reason that's so irresponsible is because Orlando Pace started game 1 as a tackle, as a true freshman. No one does that. That is not a thing that happens. Michael Jordan did that. He did that as a guard. He did not do that as a tackle. It is almost impossible to start as a tackle. But the path to the field is potentially there next year, depending on what they do in the portal, depending on how some of the other guys on the roster develop. If the Armstrongs develop. You've got other tackles on the roster, Luke Montgomery. There's probably not a desperate need for a tackle. But if David Sanders walks on campus next year and is ready to go, and there is certainly a path to the field for him day one. They gotta get him first. That's there are a couple steps here between right now and David Sanders steps on the practice field at Ohio State. But if they do get him, there is certainly a path to early playing time, I would say.
Well, and the thing is, with Paris Johnson, he was the number 1 offensive lineman, top 5 player in his class. He didn't start at tackle until his 3rd year. He started 1 year at Ohio State as a tackle, was a starting guard as a sophomore. So that is also to me another kind of like a check the box for Ohio State, in that Paris Johnson, things didn't go exactly as he planned, but he was still the number 3 overall draft pick in the 2024 or 2023 NFL draft. And so having those two be connected and being able to discuss the process and maybe expectations and reality versus expectations, like, it is not easy. Even if you are not starting as a true freshman, the process will lead you where you need to go. Ohio State was able to do that for Paris Johnson. Ohio State could do that for David Sanders. But yeah, being in the 2 deep as a true freshman, we know on the offensive line is always very, very big. Doesn't always happen. And even starting as a redshirt freshman, like Carson Hinsman did last year, like Billy Price did in 2014, like, these are things that don't typically happen. And when they do, it's also because of the depth around you. And as you said, the path to the playing time for the offensive line next year at tackle, like, you bring up a really good name, Deontay Armstrong, true freshman this year, who is very athletic and could be in the mix, will be in the mix next year, but you don't know that now. And David Sanders, on his official visit, they're going to be talking about, well, who's on the team next year? And it's like, well, this guy has 0 career starts, and this guy has 0 career starts, and this guy is, the guys that are returning, and Josh Simmons will have a bunch of starts, and I assume he'll be back. If he's not back, that would probably be a pretty good sign for his play this year, and in terms of in the Ohio State offense overall. But Sanders will have his decision made by the time we know that, and we'll certainly he'll be in school by the time we know that. In fact, I think based on the time frames, so that's going to be a very big one. You talked with Mark Givler on Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Friday. How do you feel? How does Mark feel about the Sanders possibilities right now?
I think Mark has been a little bit more cautious about Ohio State's chances. Just Southern kid. I mean, as South as Charlotte is, but not an Ohio player by any means. And the track record of pulling 5-star guys out of the South, whether it's a deep South or just kind of the medium South, is not incredible for Ohio State on the offensive line in recent years. That being said, David Sanders was in Columbus a couple times in the spring. You're not just coming up, making 2 trips up to Columbus just to, get a new uniform shoot picture. Like that's you're taking this seriously. You're viewing this as a legitimate place you might go. And now he's back for an official. Mark has been sort of trending in a more positive direction for Ohio State. Does not mean that he has Ohio State as like the lead pipe cinch lock to land him, but they are certainly a legitimate contender at this point to land him. And, you could come out of this weekend with Ohio State being the favorite. And, this is not, in Mark's view, a South Florida recruitment where this is going to go, 17 twists and turns between here and early signing day. Sanders plans to announce his decision before the season. And at that point, he is not a guy who is just absolutely loving this process and can't get enough attention and all that kind of stuff. He gets attention because of who he is and the fact that he is larger than just about everyone else around him. But he's not someone who is just milking this for every bit of attention and every retweet and every Instagram like that you can possibly get. So if you have him, if they do have a, knock it out of the park this weekend, and he makes a decision in a month or 6 weeks or whatever it is, and he commits to Ohio State, you're probably feeling reasonably okay as you can feel with just about anyone at this point in modern college football recruiting, that's going to stick. So, they have probably given themselves, I was going to say puncher's chance, but it's probably better than that. They're probably, I don't know if they are the majority favorite, but they might be a plurality favorite, could give them a 35-40% chance of landing him. Because, you still have other big Southern schools in the mix for him. So, this is not going to be easy, but they are certainly in a better spot than they were before. And, if there's a close relationship with Paris Johnson, like you said earlier, Paris Johnson can say, well, you want to know how the 5-star offensive tackle comes to Ohio State, gets on, has the path to the playing field, plays on some college football playoff teams, goes to the national championship game, goes to, becomes a top 3 draft pick in the NFL. Like that's a pretty easy story to sell. And that's a, I did it, you can too kind of situation.
If you don't want to give Ohio State a puncher's chance, would you give them the Homer Simpson punching bag chance where they just have to withstand everybody else's attacks?
I don't know if they're going to come out to Why Can't We Be Friends? That would be, yeah. Mark is not one of those people that's going to tell you that Ohio State's going to get every single person that Ohio State is chasing. He's got a pretty good track record, and he's pretty realistic about this kind of stuff. So when the needle moves for him, the needle moves for me. I'm, this is his side of the house more so than mine, but it's, Mark knows a lot. Mark knows a lot of people. Mark talks to a lot of people. Mark has visited with a lot of people. Mark has talked to a bunch of people. Mark and Kevin were down in North Carolina and talked to a bunch of people, David Sanders, but also a bunch of people around David Sanders during the Southern Swing. And, he came back from that thinking Ohio State had a better chance than he thought before. So, you never know until pen meets paper in December. But this is one where there is a real legitimate chance that this happens. And if it does, in a class with a 5-star quarterback and 5-star corners and all that kind of stuff, it's hard to be the biggest piece in a class with that many. But in terms of just pure position of need for Ohio State, boy, landing a 5-star offensive tackle would be maybe one of the biggest coups in recent Ohio State recruiting. Well,
and it would be landing their second based on some recruiting services. Carter Lowe, already part of the class, to be able to get bookends like that would be something they haven't done in a while. That you've got 2 legitimate guys that you believe are going to be the foundation of your offensive line. And I may take the field right now, but I'm not going to be shocked if Sanders ends up at Ohio State. They seem to really fit each other well. And as you mentioned, all of the visits, the contacts that he's had, the relationships that he's built won't shock me. But again, I think anytime you talk about the number 1 player at a position, it's like, well, we'll see. But right now, Devin Sanchez, number 1 at his position. Tavian St. Clair may end up number 1 at his position. So they've got some guys that are part of this. The third uncommitted guy that I really wanted to talk about is Dorian Brew, cornerback, previously from Clayton Northmont here in Ohio, moved to Conroe, Texas. Depending on where you go, he's top 5, top 10 corner, top 20, top 50 player, just based on whatever service you subscribe to. But a guy that I think people, once he moved to Texas, there are a lot of concerns like, you out of sight, out of mind with Ohio State for him. Not that Ohio State has ever has ever left him alone, but this is one where, and I'll reference Mark again. He's one. I don't know if he's one of the few, but he's still solidly on the side that Ohio State likely, or he has Ohio State favored in the Dorian Brew thing.
Yeah, he does. And, getting Brew back on campus this weekend is big. They have had Brew on campus a couple times. I think he was back for a game last fall, I believe. And, so this is someone who is still very much remaining connected to Ohio, and I'm sure he still has friends and probably family up here. So there's plenty of reasons to come up here. But this, if you grew up in a place and then you moved away for 2 years, you still probably think of the old place as home in a lot of ways. If you've ever moved, you still kind of have that lingering sense of home in the place. Home is not always where you're sleeping at any individual night. So, if he continues to come back, he is someone who Devin Sanchez and Devin Sanchez's family, another 5-star corner in the class, have been recruiting very, very hard, recruiting very publicly. Devin Sanchez's dad is recruiting him very publicly on Twitter and tagging him and, hey, when are we going to do this kind of thing? And, if that's happening publicly on Twitter, well, I have a sense that that's probably happening a little bit behind the scenes as well. And I don't know where Dorian Brew is in Texas. I know Devin Sanchez is in Houston, but, it's a big state. So you can both be in Texas and not be right around the corner. But, you could have someone local-ish sort of keeping the pressure on you as well. And yeah, this has always felt like Ohio State was in, the top tier at the very least, if not at the top, in the top tier, and that's really never changed. And you don't know where, Devin Sanchez is. It would take probably some kind of a significant act of God for Devin Sanchez to not sign with Ohio State. There's a little more question around Naeem Offord, but if you have the opportunity to be a part of the greatest secondary class in the history of college football, which is legitimately a conversation right now for around the Ohio State secondary class for 2024 or 2025, I think that's probably a draw. Having people who are other 5-stars, you're not getting recruited by guys who chose Ohio State over MAC teams. You're getting recruited by guys who chose Ohio State over every other school in the country. And they're telling you, listen, this is why I did it. This is why you should do it too. I want to play with you. We can be dominant. We can win a national championship. We can go to the NFL draft together. You're having all that conversation. So I think I am keeping a close eye on Dorian Brew this weekend. This feels like this could be a weekend that Ohio State potentially seals the deal there. I don't think he has a decision date set, but that's at least a possibility this weekend, I think.
In terms of the location of Conroy, it is to Houston, essentially as Delaware is to Columbus. Like straight up 23, whatever that 23 is in Texas, right there in Houston. That's just north, 30 or 40 miles north of Houston. Brew, we talked about 3 running backs in a class, 3 corners in a class. I know there's some talk about is Brew a safety? Is he a corner? Because I know 24/7 lists him as like 6 foot tall. But standing next to him the other last year, he seems taller than that. He certainly seems longer than that. He's a bigger corner. But him, Devin Sanchez, Naeem Offord, all visiting together, I think this is where you're going to see Tim Walton really pull out all the stops in terms of building a relationship in person. Not that they don't, I'm sure they all have group texts and things like this, but getting those 3 together, putting forth the plan for what they can be and how they, how do you put 3 corners on the field? And it's like, well, Ohio State puts 3 corners on the field pretty much every play. But they're not unique in that. That's just the way the game is now. Everybody's playing nickels at this point. And nickel is not the dirty word that it used to be. It may still be to some because I'm an outside corner, Tom. That's I'm a starting pitcher. I'm not a relief pitcher. I'm not, I need that. But I think people have softened to it, and Jordan Hancock, and you've got a bunch of guys that have shown that you can be productive at it. I remember Bradley Roby played outside corner at Ohio State, was drafted in the first round to be a slot corner, a nickel. So there is absolutely a place for it in the game. And now you've just got to decide, hey, how is this going to break up, and how's it going to shake out? Like, you don't know until you get them all out there. But what you do know is there is room for everybody. And as they showed with Jermaine Matthews this spring, you can be outside one year, you can be inside the next, you can move out. We saw it with Sean Wade. Like, you're not just one position. You can play other things as well. And you get them on campus and you figure it out. But if you get Dorian Brew along with those 2 guys, and really, this is also time about securing Naeem Offord, just making him even more convinced that this is where he needs to be. So it's a huge weekend for Brew, for Offord, and that secondary as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely. Because if you can, this is an Ohio State secondary class that is going to rank somewhere between very good and incredible, even in the scope of the history of college football. And, all of those are good outcomes. And now it's just kind of a matter of where on that spectrum does this class fall? And this weekend, as you said, is going to go a long way towards determining, does Brew get in? Does not Naeem Offord stay in? If you get both of those guys and you add some of the safety positions, they've got one of the top safeties, Fahim Delane, already in the class, still chasing Trey McNutt. I mean, this is potentially an incredible class. And you've got other guys in there as well. This is not just, well, you've got 2 good players, 3 good players. This could be like 7 guys in the secondary, 5 of whom are top 5 players at their positions in the nation. That would be pretty remarkable. Tony, I don't want to completely derail us, but I pulled up Conroe, Texas, which is where Dorian Brew is playing his high school ball right now. It is actually like 20 minutes from where I have family, so I probably should have recognized that name. It's the other direction from Houston, so that's why I haven't ever been through Conroe. Tony, I'm just going to give you some names of other towns in a probably 15-mile radius or so of Conroe, Texas. This is just, and there's a lot of empty area. There are not a lot of towns there. I'm reading about half of the names. Okay, let's see: Security, Texas; Cut and Shoot, Texas; Beach, Texas, which does not appear to have any material amount of water in it; Panorama Village; Karen, Texas. Tony,
oh no,
there's a lot of complaining going on there. Cripple Creek Farms; Egypt, Texas; and Chateau Woods. I believe that's where Louis XVI lived when he was living in Texas.
I wonder what Karen, Texas, what the reviews on Google are. Might want to check that one out.
Would not want to be wait staff in any restaurant there. I can tell you that.
Well, I don't want to blame the victim here, but if you are a wait staff in Karen, Texas, you know what you're getting into. Go do something else. Go work in customer service somewhere else, and the next town over. Go to Beach. Do something there. And could you imagine, Tom, the citizens of Karen, Texas, when they go to Beach, Texas, and this is not at all what they expected.
Okay, so I have to correct myself. I have zoomed way in on Beach, Texas, and there are a couple of what appear to be drainage ponds there. There also is a lake, Tony. Would you like to know what the lake is called? Why don't you take a guess?
Okay, I'll say Double Barrel Lake.
Not quite. It is labeled as, and I quote, the lake. So
this is right up the alley.
Truth in advertising.
No, this is not truth in advertising. This is Karen, Texas is going to come over and they're going to see this and they're going to be like, you call this a beach? You call this a lake? It's like, well, we literally just call it the lake. Boy, I would steer clear of that entire area. Conroe, sure. Lovely. Houston, lovely. Just be careful where else you're going in Texas. And that goes for everybody out there. Tom, anything else? Anybody else you want to touch on? We know there are a couple of, I guess we should mention, here's two guys let's mention. Jake Cook, Brody Lennon, two Ohio guys who earned offers at camp this month. 2025 guys in for official visits. Jake Cook, a Westerville North offensive lineman. Brody Lennon, and an Ohio tight end. When you get guys who earn their offers at camp, especially going into their senior season, and they follow that up with official visits pretty shortly after, those are guys that are generally going to end up as Buckeyes.
Yeah, those are definitely two guys I would have on commitment watch for this weekend. Jake Cook was committed to Louisville. He camped at Ohio State. We saw him 2 years ago. We saw him last year. We saw him this year, and camped at Ohio State multiple times this year. I mean, really, 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 really wanted that Ohio State offer. Ended up finally earning it. And, when Ohio State offers an in-state player like that, they are ready to accept that commitment. When you're camping at Ohio State multiple times like that, you really want that offer. And the reason you really want that offer as well, I think you might be willing to commit if you get that offer. So on campus this weekend for his official, I would be fairly surprised if we got to next Wednesday or so and that one had not popped, but we will, we'll see how that continues to develop. Brody Lennon, 3-star tight end. He was someone we saw a couple weeks ago at camp as well. He was maybe 10 days ago, something like that. I think that was last week. And he earned an offer as well. And, again, in-state prospect, obviously, in-state Ohio player. Safe to say Ohio State is probably at or near the top of the list. That's another one where I don't know that there's any reason to wait. If you want in, you have been invited in. Feels like you're probably going to be in soon-ish. So those are probably the two I would have at the top of the list of on commitment watch for this weekend. But there are other guys on that list where if Jordan Davison decides I'm okay with being in a 3-back class, I mean, you could see that happen at some point. And this is not like going to commit this weekend necessarily, but we're heading into commitment season where Justin Hill has a commitment set for July 3rd. I think it's Zion Grady has a commitment date set for July 4th. You tend to see a lot of guys commit the first half of July when you've got, you've done your officials in June. You go home, you take a little bit of time to think it through, talk things through with mom and dad and other decision makers, your coach, something like that. And then you see a lot of guys. There's generally sort of a wave of commitments in early to mid-July. If Ohio State ended up with 4 or 5 commitments between now and July 10th or July 15th, something like that, I wouldn't be remotely surprised.
No, and we'll be talking about all of those when they happen, as they happen. So make sure to lock in at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. If you're watching this right now on YouTube, go ahead and hit the thumbs up, hit the bell to be notified when we do drop those videos and go live and whatever else we're doing. And of course, you can always find us at BuckeyeHuddle.com, become a member, and talk to us behind the scenes there as well. So that will do it for today. I want to thank you all for tuning in, and we'll talk to you guys later.